Hello and welcome to this edition of Eye on Africa. I'm Haxie Myers-Belkin. The headlines. Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga urges his supporters to protest against what he calls the sham result of a repeat presidential election that he boycotted, a ballot which saw incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta claim 98% of the vote. A multi-million-euro renovation of Marrakech's historic Jewish quarter begins to bear fruit as the city welcomes swelling numbers of Israeli tourists keen to unearth Morocco's Jewish past. And this Halloween, we meet a ghost hunting collective from Cape Town who'll track down pesky poltergeists for free on request. Hello again, thank you very much for tuning in. If things don't change, elections in Kenya will become coronation rituals. The words of opposition leader Raila Odinga as he rejected the result of last week's repeat presidential election. Incumbent leader Uhuru Kenyatta won 98% of votes cast in a ballot boycotted by his adversary. That means Kenyatta effectively ran unchallenged in a rerun that was held after an initial August poll was overturned by the Supreme Court due to widespread irregularities. Let's take a listen now to Odinga's reaction to the result of this latest vote.
We reject sham elections. The meaningless exercise, a charade purported to be an election, is now behind us. Today, we return to the hard but essential task of making elections count and democracy work in Kenya. This is in line with the task we assigned ourselves at the beginning of our current journey. That we be the people who will end fraud not only in Kenya, but in all of Africa.
Attending that address in Nairobi was our correspondent Julia Steers.
In his long-awaited speech, Odinga continued his attack on President Kenyatta and on the Electoral Commission, reiterating his claims that this was a sham election. He also added that at the end of the day, this is not a fight between Odinga and Kenyatta, but rather it is an issue of democracy, of rule of law, and of respect of the country's constitution. He was considerably more vague about the specific steps forward in terms of whether or not he would be calling for continued protest in the streets or other measures. The big question of the day, of course, was whether or not he would be taking his grievances back to the Supreme Court. And on that note, he and his party also remained relatively vague.
We as a coalition have not made that decision, and we have up to 6 more days to make that decision. But the position we take is that it is the right of every Kenyan or Kenyan corporation, each of the 47 million Kenyans is free to go to court and to challenge the decision. Whether we decide to go or not, whether any Kenyan decides to go or not, we have no doubt that given the litany of irregularities, the court should be able to find that these elections were a sham. We are worried about continued violence, but the violence is from the police, not from the NASA supporters. So as much as we are worried about the violence, we cannot be in a position to tell our supporters that because the police are violent and they are killing you, now we must give up our quest for electoral justice.
Touching on whether or not he would continue to call for mass demonstrations and other similar actions from his supporters, Odinga said they'd be establishing a people's assembly, and that could include anything from economic boycotts to picketing and other constitutional means of protesting the current government. But specifics on that were few. He said those would be coming in the next few days.
As a tourist destination, Marrakech offers dazzling Islamic architecture, sumptuous cuisine and a sprawling Medina. But it's also becoming a must-see destination for Jewish culture, with Jews from across the world keen to discover the history of a country that, not so long ago, was home to North Africa's largest Jewish population.
In the courtyard of the Lazama Synagogue, at the heart of the historic Jewish quarter of Marrakech, Isaac Ohayon is delivering an impassioned history lesson. The businessman wants this place of worship, built at the time of the Spanish Inquisition in 1492, to come alive for his tour group.
It's a synagogue that was a school. You see what's up there? And down there were classes. There were more than 450 students. All the Berber villages from Marrakech up to beyond Zagora, there were 250 villages, had plenty of children who had to study the Torah, study Judaism.
In the classrooms turned museum exhibits, photos show the history of the community, now scattered between France, North America, and especially Israel. Before their mass immigration following the Second World War, Morocco was home to the largest Jewish community in North Africa. Once numbering between 250 and 300,000 people, today, fewer than 3,000 remain.
Now it's whole families that come. It's children from families whose parents are no longer around. They want to see their traces, their origins, where their parents came from, and that sort of thing.
Since the restoration of the Mellah, the name given to Jewish neighborhoods in Moroccan cities, visitors have flocked here. The renovation program, launched more than 2 years ago, has already received a budget of 17.5 million euros. Some alleyways have even had Hebrew versions of their names added to street signs.
I born in Morocco, in Fez. I live in Morocco when I was 4 years old to Israel, and in the last 10 years I'm tour leader in Morocco.
For tourists, many of whom come from Israel, it's a journey back to their roots. Morocco maintains no official economic or diplomatic ties with the Jewish state, and the subject remains sensitive. But that hasn't prevented tourism or business from flourishing. This year, according to the Moroccan press, trade between the two countries reached more than $4 million per month.
This Halloween, if there's something strange in your neighbourhood, a team of South African paranormal investigators may just be able to help. Armed with what they say is the latest in ghost-busting technology, they hunt ghouls and stake out supposedly haunted buildings. But not everyone's convinced, as Clément Bonero reports.
This team of modern-day ghost hunters is on a mission to make contact with the spirit world. Today they've been asked to investigate a train repair workshop on the outskirts of Cape Town.
How many are there of us in this room? Can you give me a number? 7! It's at 7. 7 loudly.
Troubled by stories of strange noises, the manager of the workshop knew who he was going to call.
The guys will be at work and they'll see someone run inside the wagon, and then the person disappears. There have been many reports like that.
Investigators Mark Leitao and Jade Rose use the latest technology to detect paranormal activity. Using what they call a spirit box, which scans through radio frequencies, they attempt communication.
Can you make something move in the room? Would you want to?
Says you're too many.
For the team, there's no doubt about it. The workshop is haunted.
Should we hear one voice over multiple channels? We know it can't be a radio station. Sometimes you pick up a false positive where it's a radio station where you hear music in the background or something. But when you hear a word over multiple channels, there's just no ways something from a radio channel can come through.
Cape Town Paranormal Investigations are self-funded and offer free inspections of haunted buildings. However, they say they do not get rid of potential spirits. So next time, who you gonna call?